After 5.5 hours of standard qualifying here at the Nürburgring Nordschleife, we have reached the real crucial part of the qualification process for the GT3 and the SPX cars, because over the next 2 hours and 10 minutes, we are looking forward to two separate top qualifying sessions. But the difference here is that the cars will be set off at 10-second intervals, and theoretically each of the chosen drivers for their various mounts will have the Nürburgring Nordschleife to themselves and 2 stabs at it. So you can afford a slight error on the first attempt because you will get to go around again here at the Nürburgring 24 hours, the 50th running of this fabulous race. Delighted to say that it's not only me, Johnny Palmer, in the commentary box to take you through Friday evening proceedings, but I'm going to be joined for the first part of the session by Joe Bradley and Nick Damon. Well, glorious conditions, gentlemen. The Nürburgring Castle on top of the hill there, resplendent in some sort of early evening sunshine. I was a bit worried when I was looking at the sky earlier on that rain might intervene. I like plenty of rain come the race, don't get me wrong, but I think these sessions, where possible, Joe, need to be held on a level playing field.
This, for me, Johnny, is the most exciting part of the whole week.
Yeah.
It's an all-or-nothing session. The pressure on these drivers and indeed the teams to get the cars right for this run, it's immense. The intensity of the night is fantastic, and to have the conditions that you've described are absolutely perfect. Not too hot, not too cold, not too windy, and more importantly, dry.
So we got a combination of the GT3s, the SP9 cars, and some SPX machines in there too. In fact, yeah, all 3 SPXs are going to be in this first session of the 2, billed in the regulations as top Q1. And the target here for the now 20 runners in this session is to try and finish in the top 4. So it's basically a shootout where we are going to lose 16 cars in this part of the day, and their positions in that first grid of 60-odd cars tomorrow at 4 o'clock will be decided. So we are basically banking in positions 21 back to 40 in the SP9s. And they can't all fit in there, Nick Damon. There are plenty of cars that deserve to be in Q2 already, but it's going to be quite a fight.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of top teams taking part in this event. Obviously, there were 2 qualifying races. Some of the teams who were here didn't take part in those qualifying races or had problems, so they hadn't automatically qualified through. They're looking for 4 places. The interesting thing is that when we get to top qualifying 2, the draw has already been made for when they go off. So they know that if you are the top qualifier in this session, you'll go off 12th. If you're second, you'll go off 4th. If you're third, you go off 3rd. And if you're the 4th person in there, you'll go off 8th, because we have got 20 cars go off in order. That's been drawn already. I did wonder how long that was going to take, actually. I thought they'll come in, they'll obviously have to get something like Bobby Davro in to get the balls all rolled round and then pick them out. But no, it's already been done.
Yeah, I was looking forward to that Tom Bowler type draw on the main straight, actually.
I'm just thinking, who'll know who Bobby Davro is, Nick? You're going to have to explain that one, but maybe another time.
Maybe in the night time.
Maybe, yeah,
Saturday
3 or 4
night, Sunday morning.
Yeah.
That would be ideal.
Sorry, I mean, do you not immediately think of 80s TV stars, think of someone driving a Tom Bowler?
Straight, did he know?
I'm wondering whether Walter Hornung, who is the clerk of the course again here at this great event, that's the voice we can hear, I think, in the background, quite possibly. But anyway, Walter will have been, well, he's been busy boy along with the rest of his team in race control, because one or 2 of the kind of key protagonists going into this session have already been given some penalties, including for the number 1 Porsche, which is run by Manthey in the Grello colours. They were victorious yesterday, according to the big old book that I bought a couple of days ago. The image of their car emblazoned on the front. But we know for a fact that car's going to have to start the race at the back of Startgruppe 1.
Even in the pit lane, we're not quite sure about which of the penalties he got yet, because it depends if it's a German penalty or the English penalty. And by that I mean the English language penalty or the German language penalty.
Yes.
So it's either starting at the back of that particular group, because of course they go off in 3 groups this event, or it's starting after the first group, and that gap between the group, but from the pit lane. So not only would it be at the back, it would be a few seconds further back as well from there. But then again, it will avoid the carnage in the first corner. So
that might be the thinking behind the pit lane start, actually.
To give your point, as far as we know, that number 1 car will not be taking part.
Yeah.
According to a tweet from Lawrence Vantor,
I
maybe?
believe so. Yeah,
There's certainly been some social media-age from one of those drivers to say that's us out of the session now. And there's something I suggested in one of our earlier broadcasts. To me, it seems a sensible decision, because why would you risk the car on single qualifying when you know you're starting from the back anyway?
Well, that came from the team, and it makes no sense whatsoever, because it doesn't matter what happens tonight, it's not going to change where you start, as Nick described. You're still going to start there. So why would you bother? Why would you? Unless, of course, you certainly wouldn't bother running a qualifying setup. You might as well get the car ready for the race. And unless you want to test a system, you've got a couple of, a little bit of time on the track. I'm pretty sure that team doesn't need any more running here. They've got. It's not data acquisition. They're not going to need that. It makes complete sensible sense, if that makes any sense. Not to run tonight.
Yeah, because there's zero reward for any element of risk. So what's the point? And also you put in miles on the engine, miles on the gearbox. Yeah, it's no point.
Well, you can spend the time more readily getting the car ready for a 24-hour race rather than a one-lap optimised run.
Cars rolling for the 10-minute free warm-up at the start of this process. You've got they have to be back in the pits again before 18:01. It's currently 17:51 local time, and they will then start them at the intervals. Do we know what the intervals are between the cars?
It's usually 10 seconds between the two. So it's pretty swift, and there is always a chance, because bear in mind we're going to have Pro-Am cars and Pro cars out in the same session. So there's a strong chance, I think, that one or two might catch some of the slower runners that drivers have been put in because of they being Pro-Am. And the cars that are going to be in Q1 and then potentially going into Q2, there have already been nominated drivers for the second session, because the one bit I missed in the rules, to be honest, is that you can't have the same driver in each of Q1 and Q2. So if you are one of the top four cars, you've then got to switch your driver. So, for instance, CP Racing, Charles Espenlaub is labelled as the Q1 driver, and if CP Racing are lucky enough to finish in the top four, it'll be Shane Lewis who does the latter session.
And just to clarify for our viewers and listeners, out of these 20 cars that we're about to see qualify, 4 cars continue into the second qualifying session tonight. Now, you might think, well, what's the logistics of that? It isn't an issue, really. We'll refuel the cars, we'll put a new set of tyres on. These cars are built to go 24 hours, for instance. So having a little bit of a break after an optimised run and get ready for another optimised run to get you even further up the grid, that's not really going to be an issue at all.
There'll be Jesse Krohn in the Schubert Motorsport BMW. That car was looking very good, very handy in the 3 qualifying sessions earlier this week, one of which was held today at 2:10 for an hour. Yesterday evening's was the longest at 3 hours, from 8:30 through till 11:30. But there was also a 90-minute session yesterday afternoon as well, and all the times from those 3 sessions were, in a sense, combined. So you could have set a provisional pole in any of them if you're in some of the lower order classes, for instance Cup X, Cup SP3T. We've already decided pole position cars for those places. All we're doing here is effectively deciding what order the top 40 cars will start at the front of the first starting group. So that's 37 SP9 cars and the 3 SPX cars. But remember, SP9 is split between Pro and Pro-Am driver lineups, and we already have a number of confirmed Pro-Am machines. For instance, one of the first cars off in this session, which will be the BMW Junior team in the second session, rather, Q2, the 72 crew, which will probably be many people's favourites for a very good overall result. But because Dan Harper, Max Hesse and Neil Verhagen are still relatively inexperienced, I don't think any of those are gold. And when you add up their precious metal via the measurement system that the organisers have in place, they are a Pro-Am team, and they will be 9th off in Q2. But 2 cars running in formation, 33 and 44, both from the Falcon Motorsports outfit, Joe.
We've already got problems though, Johnny. The 706 numbered Glickenhaus has come to a halt on the Grand Prix Strecker. It's just at the kink before the chicane, before we head out onto the Nordschleife, and that's brought out yellow flags there. Car stranded, so that's going to have to be recovered. So that might delay the start of this session proper, I should say.
One adjustment has been made between the initial list of cars that had pre-qualified and then when that was made official, because I noticed that there was a temporary list and has been there for a number of weeks now, which contain 15 cars that are definitely going to be in Q2. That's now 16, and a few of us in the media centre were trying to work out which car had already got the lucky dog, if you like, without needing to run in Q1. It's the number 6 Mercedes-AMG Team Bilstein car for Hubert Haupt, Marvin Dienst, Nico Bastian and Gabriele Piana. So that's 3 silvers and 1 gold in the form of Bastian, and that's another Pro-Am car, therefore, as the Glickenhaus is struggling to get up to speed as well. Glickenhaus in by virtue of the fact that it is an SPX car, and its allocated driver should be, as long as it gets there, Felipe Fernandez-Larza, to go off 4th in the order.
It's moving again.
Good.
So I think that was probably a control or delete situation. The car was just pulled off to the right-hand side of the track, driver's right, just coming through the kink before the Vedal chicane, and the car remained, it switched, it's going slowly again, and I'm not really sure, he's missed the pit lane, hasn't he? So he's
well,
gone
that
back
might be part of the
around.
plan, because, as Nick says, this is effectively free practice, or a shakedown, a warm-up ahead of qualifying. It might be that the Glickenhaus, 5 minutes to go. So some have decided to already find their positions to drivers left on the start-finish line, and then others might be going around again.
He's taken up his position, isn't he, for the run? So he's got he must be happy with the car. He hasn't gone into the pits, so the control alt delete, the reset that he seemed to carry out there, out on the back stretch through the kink, seems to have worked. The car's moving, and it looks like he's pulled in to his starting position, which is 4th.
Yep.
He's fourth in the queue.
So Felipe Fernandez-Larza elected as the first driver, and if the Glickenhaus does get through into phase 2, it'll be Franck Mayer to take charge of the 706. So KTM from AG/True Racing should be at the sharp end of the field, with Tim Heinemann to start that, and Reinhard Koffler, the nominated driver for part 2. So it's actually going to be a SPX car to start, a Pro-Am SP9 car second, and then the Schubert Motorsport BMW. I fancy Jesse Krohn, once he's waved off 20 or seconds behind, he's going to have some overtaking to do in the first bit of his lap. Now, remember, it's there's a flying lap, there's an out lap, a first flying lap, and a second flying lap. So there is the strong chance that the 20 car will be clear and into decent conditions after that.
If you're the 20 car, you're going to be able to make up 21 cars, so you're going to be able to make up a bit of time to get past there too. There's going to be some cars in this mid-pack who are going to find themselves held up. They won't have enough time, even though lap in the flying lap, to make up. You're looking at making up 30 or 40 seconds on some over those 2 laps, but you'll find you'll be right behind someone. If it's an SPX car, you could lose 5 or 6 seconds just there.
The interesting thing for me is it's going to be the first time we've had all week where we've got a relatively clear track for these drivers, and we're going to see a quicker run as a consequence of that. So yes, you may have 1 or 2 cars to get by, but fundamentally the purpose of tonight in this qualifying session is to give the drivers a chance of a clear run around the whole of the 15
miles. 15 miles.
15 miles, 15.3 miles. 25 kilometres.
Yeah.
Why does it do that? 25 and 50.
Well, because they're two different types of measurements.
I know that. But let's say 15 miles, 25. It's 25. I knew there was a 5 in there. 25.378 to be exact.
Now the brain's working straight in with the details.
Very good, Joe. I'm impressed. I'll give you an idea of maybe the sort of ballpark we're going to be thinking about, because in the top qualifying session for the qualifying races, now remember, we have NLS rounds, but we also have 2 qualifying races ahead of the 24 hours. And Augusto Farfus, a couple of weekends ago in the 99 BMW, did an 8 minutes, 8 seconds lap. And that's the Grand Prix circuit and the full Nordschleife, 808.421 to be exact.
And the quickest time so far this week has been in 8 minutes 14.
Yes, so a long way away.
And that came about in the first qualifying practice session.
It did, when Nicky Katzberg set it.
That has stayed there all week.
Really not sure there've been many clear laps since then.
That's the problem,
There's always been a little bit of scuffage around, a little bit of yellow, sometimes a very serious piece of yellow that's caught people out with code 60s. As long as none of these guys throw it off on the first lap, it should be that everyone get at least 1 clear run.
That's the 1 minute board, by the way, the whistle in the background there. Nice, the whistle for the 1 minute board.
Nice to see using whistles here.
motorsport.
In this digital world, we have a lovely blowable whistle.
It's a proper referee's whistle as well, like a football referee's
Very good.
whistle.
The really weird thing now is that KTM's offside.
The other thing we got to think about is this race is completely open tyre. So the Valkenhorst Motorsport BMWs, I know for a fact, are on Yokohamas. Most of the Audis are on Michelins. I think
there's some Falcons in there.
There's the two Falcon Porsches, 33 and 44. KTM, not sure. Actually.
I don't think the GT cars, did they? They didn't qualify. They're in the much lower class, aren't they?
Yes. So yeah, it's a lot of the.
Is that Hankook I can see on the decal on the car?
Might be.
I'm not going to call that one yet.
But yeah, GT tired cars, are in the lower classes, but we will obviously put the spotlight on those when we get to the race. The green flag's about to be raised to allow Tim Heinemann in the 116 True Racing KTM to set off. They're Michelin tyres on the KTM from Austria. Next car will be Charles Espenlaub in the 21 Mercedes. Just about getting a forward gear there and lighting up the rear Michelins to heat them up nice and early. Then it's going to be Jesse Krohn, and I think the Schubert Motorsport BMW's priority on this outlap will be to try and get by the two cars in front, if at all possible. I'd expect the True Racing KTM to be holding up Charles Espenlaub to an extent as well. Glickenhaus away, Felipe Fernandez-Laza in the SCG 004C. Then the KCMG Porsche, which received damage in qualifying one after some confusion between the then driver Nick Tandy and pursuing Patrick Pilet in the 44 Porsche. The two of them, two former teammates from the same car, many times, Nick and Patrick, came to blows. But thankfully the KCMG car was able to continue in that session and didn't require too many repairs. It'll be Earl Bamber in the 18. The Twinbush Equipe Vitesse Audi is driven by Pierre Caffer for this first run. Dries Vanthoor in the number 15 Audi. Then the Landgraf Mercedes with Patrick Assenheimer being released. Is there a drama there for the Toxport Porsche? No. There's a gap between Toxport and the next car that confused me. I thought one had to duck around the other. Mathieu Jaminet in the all-black Toxport WRT. Henry Valkenhorst for Valkenhorst Motorsport. That's a Pro-Am car, number 100, goes away. Interesting that Scherer Sport Phoenix have chosen Swiss driver Ricardo Feller in the number 5. It's Matteo Cairoli, who's designated in both of the Dynamic Motorsport Porsches, but for qualifying, he's just in the 28. Alessio Picariello in the 44 Falcon Motorsports Porsche. Safely away. The second of the Dynamic Motorsport Porsches is Christian Engelhardt. Again, he's eligible to drive both cars when we get to the race. A very late call-up for Dutchman Jeroen Bleekemolen in the Racing 1 Ferrari 488 GT3. I think at the start of the week he got the call to be in the number 14. Then it is the second of the True Racing KTM Crossbow GT2s, Ferdinand Stuck. And if that car gets through, he'll be handing it over to Johannes Stuck for Q2. And the final 4 cars, the sister Rover Racing BMW is already in to the main qualifying session, but 98, which is the one that's been setting the pace so far, when Nicky Katzberg did an 8:14.771. Well, let's see whether Sheldon van der Linde can go even faster than that. Patrick Pilet is away in the 33 Falcon Motorsports Porsche. David Pittard been chosen as the driver for Q1 in the TF Sport Aston Martin Vantage AMR GT3, car number 90. And the final car, now there's been a change here as well, because provisionally the number 4 on my sheet was actually into Q2, but the 2 Get Speed Mercedes have been switched around. 4 needs to qualify, number 3 is already in. And this is not what we wanted to see, Joe, for the Glickenhaus, because at the end of the Grand Prix lap, it's coming to the pits.
Yeah, a tragedy. We saw the car come to a halt. We thought the driver had been able to get the car working again. He did what was apparent a control or delete. However, the car, having taken the start of the qualifying session, has made his way straight to the pits. And it looks like the car on the trolley jacks and being wheeled into the garage. So that, I think that car is now out of qualifying. That will be starting at the back of this group.
Yeah, I think you have to complete a full Nordschleife lap. The regulations do not allow you to duck in via the back door to the pits and then rejoin the session, because in a sense he's missed his spot now. Should have been off as the 4th placed car. So we're down to 19 already, Nick Damon, and a question of, well, just getting the right amount of heat into whichever tyres you've chosen to run, but not spending them too much, I suppose, before the end of the 25-kilometre lap, because you need to be able to push not only lap 1, but lap 2 if possible as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a case, the track is probably continuing to improve. It's the temperature will be quite standard. We've had some rain, so any running on it is going to clean it up. The cars are beginning to sort of clump a little bit, because what's happening is if there's a slower car, the faster cars are catching up. So, for example, we have those top 3 cars now running line astern. That's the 116, the 21, and the 20, the True Racing, CP Racing, Stuart Motorsport. Currently, it's still led by the True Racing KTM Crossbow, but I get a feeling that probably on the Dottinger Hoe, the 2 big GT3s will blast past. Again, minimum risk, because once you get the top of the corner, they are now supposed to go through Bergwerk. Perhaps they might try and get through Kesselsen as well with the flat-out run. But yeah, I mean, it's tactic, isn't it? It is the option, in fact, of course, to fall back if you think you can find a big enough space. Those KTMs aren't super slow. They're probably 8-9 seconds, perhaps not even that off a GT3 lap. So if you can see that gap in front of you, you can drop 16 seconds off to get those 2 clear laps. That's also a tactic, whilst keeping the warmth in the car, the temperature on the tyres, because obviously by going slow you reduce those optimum temperatures, or as you say, possibly you actually manage to save your tyres better, Johnny.
Or do you wait until you're coming out of Tiergarten, get a lovely slipstream across the start-finish line and go across the start-finish line 5-10 miles an hour more than you would on a normal lap? So we're going to see a little bit of tactics here. They're just coming up towards, just about to turn right and head towards the carousel for a location.
I'll give you an idea of the pace of the quicker of the 2 True Racing KTMs. After 3 qualifying sessions, it actually got up to 9th place overall, car 116, and they did an 8:16.8.
Oh, wow. That's about 3 seconds off then.
Yeah, but bear in mind, I think we'll tumble down below the 8-minute 10s for the fastest GT3s, and I'm not sure a KTM can get much more off that 8:16. We'll have to wait and see. But they've put Tim Heinemann in for the first run, and Reinhard Koffler, as I say, if they do get through in the 116. But all 3 SPXs should have been in this session, and at the moment Tim Heinemann has no one with him as he charges hard on the approach to Brunchen.
Yeah, they've just the guys have decided to make space. They have taken the information I didn't have, which they're only going to lose 4 seconds to the Crossbow probably, and they're backing off. I'm not quite sure. I think actually that Jesse Krohn now is getting more interested in getting past Charles Espinal in space. Definitely,
Krohn looking for a way by the American at every turn of the wheel there. Ice curve next for the KTM Crossbow. Doesn't look to be a great deal of grip there, and the BMW's already passed the CP Racing Mercedes. So that will be the second car in the order now as they re-emerge at the end of the Dottinger Hoe in a couple of minutes' time, heading to Tiergarten and Hohenrhein, which is the real tricky chicane to end the lap. And that link road between the tourist lap part of the Nordschleife proper and the more recently built, although the 80s Grand Prix circuit. So they're now heading actually for Brunchen now, and the area where they leave the ground, and the Schwabenschwanz, which is the second concreted area, with Jesse Krohn having dealt with the slight distraction of Charles Espinal. But Charles will be fully focused now on trying to get a very good Pro-Am time. It's going to be tough for the Pro-Ams in this session, of which there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Pro-Am combinations, but obviously you don't have to utilise any of your bronze or silver drivers. Sensibly, everyone's put in their quick S driver, but needing to hold back a reserve should they get into Q2. So Tim Heinemann still looking to get some heat into the Michelin tyres at the end of the lap, Joe.
Bizarrely, he's been hammering around the Nordschleife. He's coming down the Dottinger Hoe, and he's still not happy with these tyre temps. He's heading down the straight towards Tiergarten, not quite at the kink yet. Still a way to go before you go through that flat-out kick. It isn't really a problem for these cars. It's you virtually don't turn the steering wheel. You just think the car through the left-hand sweep, and then up towards the Tiergarten, where you really have to switch the concentration on, don't you? Because you could have an absolutely fabulous lap that is completely destroyed by being just sucked into that magnetic aspect of the Tiergarten.
Just slightly into the barriers.
Just slightly into the barriers. Hopefully not tonight. Hopefully for no one. I wouldn't wish that on anyone.
Most of the cars appear to be lurking marching down the Dottinger Hoe like they came back drunk from a dinner dance.
Yes.
But I think they are just getting an extra couple of degrees, and the first flying lap has been started by the KTM Crossbow GT2 number 116, and into that unpleasant little immediate sharp left after you go around turn 1. Quite frankly, the most awful bit of cornerage I think I've ever seen on the racetrack.
It really is.
The famous Yokohama S, right and left, or the Haug Hook as it has previously been called. Yep, correct.
Ask Bruce about the egg story.
From the DTM days. Okay, I'll bank that. Down towards Dunlop Kera, the hairpin at the bottom of the hill. And Tim Heinemann still with no immediate pressure from behind. It's testament to the speed of this KTM and how it's been developed through the years, the Crossbow GT2. Because Jesse Krohn, who's only just heading into the hairpin now in the background, and Krohn, he's going into the second sector now.
Heinemann quicker than Krohn.
Wow.
In Sector 1. In fact, Heinemann so far the quickest in Sector 1, 40.1. That's in comparison to a 40.4 for Krohn in the Schubert BMW. CP Racing's Charles Espenlaub is 41 dead through that first sector. So that crossbow is a very, very quick race car. And there's us thinking that it was maybe Krohn just backing out of it a little bit to give himself a bit of space. I think he's struggling to catch it.
This, of course, is the actual racetrack part. This is the part that the GT2 car excels on a large F1 circuit. Now, everything changes. Now we're on the Nordschleife, and it's uphill, down dale, it's narrow, it's nasty, it's bumpy, and it's not quite the same for any car to perform in.
This is where these drivers that are out there tonight earn their money. This is where these guys earn their big bucks, because the pressure of running on the Nordschleife and knowing the job is to optimize every single aspect of it. That's quite an ask, and the level of ability and the performance level from the drivers and the concentration level and everything, on every level, everything is having to be optimized. The drivers have to be really on their game here.
Tim Heinemann, still relatively early on in his racing career. He's only 24 from Germany and has run in the ADAC GT4 Championship for a couple of seasons, but ran in Cup X with a crew that are here this year, actually, Team McChip DKR. And they're not in Cup X because that's an all Teichmann Racing division this year, but McChip are here. Oh, now what happened at Schwedenkreuz, because there was a puff of smoke. I think that was from one of the front tyres as Tim tried to slow the KTM in time for Arenberg, just briefly unsettling the car, but the pace was actually still pretty good, and he barely ran out wide at Arenberg and heading for the foxhole, so dealt with that unexpected moment very well indeed.
Krohn's clawed a little bit of time back in Sector 4, but still the man who's got the quickest run so far into Sector 4 is the car that went out first, the 116 Crossbow. Fastest car through Sector 1 at the moment, though, is Mathieu Jaminet in the TalkSport WRT Porsche. He went out 9th, and his time, fractions though, isn't it? Just thousandths of a second difference. That's put him fastest in Sector 1. Still faster than Sector 2, though. Still the Crossbow.
Just dealt with the two left-handers at Metzgersfeld. This is Kallenhard, the right-hander, and Versifen coming up too. And we're at the point of the track for Tim Heinemann now, where he's plunging downhill towards Exmuller, which is where, in days gone by, there was a second, or still is a sort of a second entry onto the tourist laps there, but very rarely used. And sections of the track that start to look a little bit the same, because you've got the downhill right, then followed by a left, and that configuration of corners is almost repeated before you get to Exmuller properly, as he now goes over the road bridge and starts the ascent to some really quick stuff at Kesselchen, Klostertal, and then the slower right-hand approach to the carousel, halfway up to Hoher Acht. And there's definitely a racing line of tyre wear that, the rubber's gone down over several sessions, and not just the 24-hour cars. I can see that glinting in the sunlight, actually, that racing line, which has rubbered up nicely.
This section is completely uphill. You need a really strong engine. You've got to come out of Bergwerk really well, because that momentum can just be sucked away, can't it, Nick? That uphill run. And then as you get towards this section of track, now that he's through Kesselchen, he's heading towards the left-hander at Klostertal. And this is the left-hander that you really need to, dare I say it, muster as much courage as you can.
Yes.
But not too much, because you really have to be a little bit conservative, because it's very easy to use the curb on the exit. Now he's down towards the right-hander that leads to the uphill stretch towards the carousel. And the carousel, yeah, one of the relatively slower parts of this track, the banked hairpin that you just throw the car into, that banked section, the concrete banking that was kind of the iconic feature of the Nürburgring Nordschleife, isn't it? You've got all those iconic photographs from down through the ages, the Caracciolo Auto Unions and the Mercedes going through that same section of concrete banking. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, you're fighting all the way. The car's trying to pull itself out of the bank all the time, and if you do pop up over the crest, it's like second half gone straight away. So you've got to keep really, it's left-hand out, pulling it round, trying to balance the throttle to keep the car down and move through, and then you get that perfect exit into this. Obviously, I would say the most tricky section as you come out from the carousel and you run around the never-ending selection of fast left, right, you know, through Hoact and Whipham and Brunchen. And that's really, I think, what separates the men from the boys, and really where the time's made up.
Slight concern, I think, for Pierre Caffer, because he didn't come through in 6th position through the last split. Dries Vantol's got ahead of him. That might just be a bit of inter-Audi understanding, and Caffer allowing through the Pro car, because bear in mind, Caffer's machine is actually a Pro-Am entry. And there were yellow flags at Hatzenbach not too long ago as well, still being shown, in fact, at Marshall Post 65. And I'm trying to work out who that might have been. Joe's going to check the tracker.
Well, you check that, Johnny.
Comprehensively the fastest car is Sheldon van der Linde in the Rover Racing number 98. Went off 17th, so he's quite bad, but he's gone through 4 sectors, every single one in purple so far. So van der Linde is definitely saying, well, I'm going to do it on lap 1. He's actually got the True Racing crossbow, which is also has disappeared off of 2 sectors, so that's interesting.
Well, that is the problem at Hatzenbach. It's the 117 True Racing KTM of Ferdinand Stuck. Now, you don't often have a small moment at Hatzenbach, the swinging of corners right and left and right and left. Has he hit the barrier there, or has the car just stopped? But there are a couple of Marshall posts displaying yellow flags, and that's going to rather scupper everybody else that is either due to go through that area for the first of their laps, or indeed the start of the second lap for everyone. So does that mean that pole position is automatically going to be decided on this first run for everybody, and therefore Sheldon van der Linde is in the perfect position to get into the top 4?
I'm sure the race control will be right on that, and be, if the car has hit the barrier or has been it's certainly come to a halt, but they'll be trying to think about how to recover that car very, very sharply, so that they don't destroy what will be a second run for these drivers.
Well, it'll be, ironically enough, the sister car at True Racing that will be the first car through that area, because now Tim Heinemann is heading through Hohenrhein and over the grid hatchings to complete the lap. It's an 8:13.095, so that is faster than any of the SP9s have been all week. And to give you an idea probably of how low we're going to be dropping for the next car through, it's an 8:12.883 for Jesse Krohn. He was able to go purple on one of the speed traps, got up to 206 kilometers per hour through sector 5, the middle of the 9 sectors. But intriguingly, Tim Heinemann faster than Krohn in that final run to the line. So clearly straight line speed in the KTM is very, very good, as we've noted on the Grand Prix circuit. Over the line next is Charles Espenlaub, and Espenlaub's time for the CP Racing Mercedes is an 8:27.361. Now just slotting between Heinemann and Espenlaub is Earl Bamber in the number 18 KCMG Porsche, and to second fastest Dries Vantol. And as I mentioned, Dries was off in as the 6th placed car, rather 7th placed car, and came through 6th, so he's got ahead of Pierre Caffer somewhere around the lap, and has gone second fastest in Dries's number 15 Audi at 8:13.059. Expecting Mathieu Jaminet across the line very shortly, and I just think I heard the rumble of the 6.2 litre V8 of Patrick Assenheimer in the Landgraf Mercedes as well. They are all in the final sector as Mathieu Jaminet clips the curb at Hohenrhein. over the slight rise there. That hairpin on the Grand Prix circuit has recently been resurfaced, I've just noticed. And over the line will go Jaminet to the top, 8:12.672 after his first run. And still big question marks as to how hard everyone can push when they get to Hatzenbach, because those yellow flags are still in.
Car through on the tracker, which of course is the 116. True Racing, and they have to slow down. It's the 120-kilometre limit at that point, and in fact, I think it's actually gone to a waved purple area, so I think it's even slower. So they are all easing back during that sector.
It's gone to 60.
It's cost them at least a second, the second half, and that probably means, as you said, Johnny, this is the lap, unless they can clear this before the last of these cars come around for their second run.
So it's all about Sheldon van der Linde here, who's set 5 purple sectors so far. He's green in sector 6 and 7 as well, and a clear road in front of him. 7:45 we're up to. And the run to the line will take about 25 seconds. Can he get beneath the magic 8 minutes and 10 seconds? To be honest, at the moment, that's not a priority, as long as, Joe, you're in the top 4.
Absolutely. I'm intrigued. I'm really excited to see this Rover BMW into the Tiergarten now. He will then go through the left-hander, flat out now, up through the gearbox and across the line. He's got 5-6 sectors in purple showing up. What will be the time then as he crosses the line? And as we suspected, 8 minutes 11.039. And that car's gone to the top of the timing.
It's going to be this lap, because if you look at the people who've gone through that slow zone, we've got 111, 118, Van Linde at 102 through that sector 3, where the problem is.
The KTM's on a tow road, and I'm trying to work out how much damage is there for Ferdinand Stuck, but at least the car's no longer on the racetrack, but the yellows are still out, and I think the speed limit's still going to be in place for a little while as well.
Yeah.
Are they going to be happy with just pushing the car towards the barrier and away sort of as far as they can from trackside? They've removed the slow zone, so they are happier with that.
So where is van der Linde now?
So van der Linde...
In 98. I don't think he's going to be anywhere close to that incident yet. He'll be on the Grand Prix circuit still.
Still on the Grand Prix circuit, yeah. So he's going to get a second run.
And Jaminet has gone through sector 2, but we want the sector 3 time just to give us an idea of how much he has been delayed. David Pittard, well, actually,
Assenheimer has just gone through not delayed by much. He's done a 104, so he's at most, that's within the range. It looks like everyone Assenheimer onwards is going to be unaffected. Yet Jaminet's done a 103.5, which is absolutely on pace. So about the first 7 got caught by that slow zone. The last 5 or 6 will get a second lap. Don't forget, of course, it's not actually, the key point is not being first here, it's being in the top 4. That's your bump ups. Those are the guys who go forward to qualifying 2, which is currently Van der Linde with Rover Racing, Jaminet with Talksport WRT, Matteo Carola with Dynamic Motorsport, and Jesse Krohn. So it's the people like Van Toor and Heinemann with Audi and the True Racing, whether they got caught, whether they can get a chance to improve, because otherwise those top 4 are happily through.
But Jesse Krohn is right on the bubble, and his third sector was awful because he caught.
So he hasn't got a second lap, so he's a sitting duck. So were either Lawrence Van Toor or the True Racing? Well, we know that Heinemann was caught, so either Lawrence Van Toor or Patrick Pilet, were they the other side of the actual damage? Sorry, the slow zone.
Well, Pilet hasn't produced a third sector time yet, so he'll be fine, I think, too. David Pittard, likewise, he was further back. Pittard was off as the penultimate car.
Engel as well, which I think it must have a chance of making it. So there's 3 or 4 people who can steal that 4th place. Van Toor, no, he got a 109 in sector 3, so he was slightly caught by that. So it's very much the chance is Patrick Pilet, Pittard and Maro Engel, those cars, the Falcon Motorsports, TS Sports, Mercedes-AMG Get Speed, they will at least get 2 goes at it.
But as you say, people like David Pittard, who's currently 8th, his time 8 minutes 13.1. He's now got a second run, and the car's just ahead of him, stifling his move into the top 4, are the cars that were slowed and stifled with regards to that slow zone. So there's every chance that we're going to see the TF Aston Martin moving up and potentially qualifying for the second session.
And Maro Engel would be one of the big favourites before this session got started to get into the top 4. He's 9th, so a lot of time to find, but Engel is only just going through sector 3 now, so that's the Hatzenbach area, Flutplatz, and the run towards Schwedenkreuz and Arenberg. The top four as things stand: Rover Racing BMW number 98 Sheldon van der Linde, the 27 Tok Sport WRT Porsche for Mathieu Jaminet, Matteo Cairoli in the Dynamic Motorsport Porsche number 28, and Jesse Krohn, very susceptible to being overtaken in fourth position because of that Duff third sector. Nothing to do with him. They were clearing up a KTM and on the Hatson back, and he's just going to have to complete the lap for Schubert and hope that his qualifying time, though out of the top four, is still okay regarding his position in start Group 1. Ricardo Feller is pushing like crazy on the early part of the lap, so right-hander at Flugplatz. This is further around the lap, beg your pardon, and the run now up the hill towards the carousel, in fact, for car number Ricardo Feller running in number 5 for Phoenix. Oh, and he's straddling the concrete there. That's what you were talking about. The car wanting to drift wide all the time, Nick.
Yeah, that would lost at least half a second. It's a horrible feeling when he pulls away from you.
It's the different grip level that you get from the concrete to the tarmac. And as we saw there, the car spat out of the carousel. That's going to cost him time. We'll keep an eye on that sector time and just see how much time being spat out of the carousel will cost a car.
Mathieu Jaminet's just gone quicker than anybody else through Sector 6. That is one of the shorter sections, though. 35.2 is an indication of how hard the Frenchman's pushing already, clinging on to second fastest in this session. 1.6 is the deficit between Jaminet's effort, first time around, and Sheldon van der Linde in the Rover Racing BMW. I fancy Sheldon's time, if not good enough already, could be improved upon. He's not gone green, though, through any of the first 6 sectors, so that again might be an idea of how the peak performance of the tyre's gone already.
I'm feeling like if I was his team manager, I'd be phoning up saying that's fine, don't worry.
Yeah, you're in.
It's top 4. We're not bothered about it. Let's ease it back. Let's not push anything. Get it home safely. Not a problem.
Well, 35.7 might be an idea that he's already done that, because that's half a second slower than Mathieu Jaminet. But those that will be pushing will be Dries Van Tor in the number 15 Audi. The car entered, number 15 entered by Team Phoenix again. You've got Patrick Pilet, who went green through the first couple of sectors, so a car best on the Grand Prix circuit, but he hasn't really found much pace since then, since hitting the Nordschleife. And David Pittard could be a threat as well, going green in a number of sectors in the TF Sport Aston, Joe.
I think that Van Tor has lost this lap now. He was 6 seconds behind, and that slow zone at the Hatzenbach has cost him 6 seconds on the quickest times through that sector 3, and there is nowhere on this track, the rest, albeit a very long track, you're going to make up 6 seconds, not on the cars and the way that these cars perform.
And we've got Ricardo Feller. It looks like he's got a chance to move up. He was only 8/10 off a bump up, and he's already greened as such. He's hit the car's fastest sector in 7 of the 9 sectors. Sorry, again, 6 of the 8 sectors he's done with 1 to go. He's gone fast in the car. He's timed it at 1.8 off, which would be enough. There'd be a 12.9, right on the cusp actually with Jesse Krohn. A 12.9 would put him a 10th out. So it's Feller who's right on the bubble at the moment. Jaminet's already in. He crossed the line for the second time.
So Jaminet over the line, and it's an 8.14.0. So
big one, Feller.
Second and a half off.
He's lost it the last couple of sectors. He's slightly quicker. He's dropped to 7th overall.
But Feller was an improvement from lap 1 to lap 2, so 8.13.096, but that ain't going to be a top 4. Now, what about Maro Engel, who is improving and finding time? It'll be better than 10th, I'm sure, by the end of the lap, but he's got to be an 8.12.883, which is Jesse Krohn's time. Jesse has done his requisite 2 laps now. Maro Engel's at Brunchen, turning right there and heading for the ice curver. David Pittard is in the long sector 7 currently, where if you mean business, you've got to be doing a 2.26 there or thereabouts. And it's for Pilet, it's a 2.29. So he's been quite severely delayed there. Patrick Pilet in the 33 car, currently 8th, looking to try and improve on an 8.13 flat. And trying to get, he really only needs 0.2 of a second to leapfrog Jesse Krohn and bag that final place up for grabs. 4th position in this session means you go through to Q2.
Keep an eye on the Aston Martin, though. David Pittard in the TF Sport car. He's been quicker than the cars ahead of him through all the sectors. He's into the final sector now, so he should be with us very, very shortly. I'm talking about the number 90.
Yeah, Piddard only needs to find about 4/10 to go past Jesse Cronin currently in fourth. So with all those green sectors, unless he's dropped one somewhere, it's looking quite good.
Coming out the Tiergarten now, crossing the line. What was that final sector? And he hasn't moved up the order. 8:13.
In 8:18 that time.
8:13.4.
Yeah.
It's 0.3 down from his previous lap.
8:13.4, yeah, compared to the
went wrong.
0.1. So where did he lose that time, if we can work it out? They were generally all improvements, possibly Sector 5, which wasn't green, because he looked very healthy on the Grand Prix circuit as well. Mauro Engel is slowing for Tiergarten and Hohenrhein. This is the final car that was waved off in Q1, and Mauro Engel, can he get into fourth position at the death? Well, he set an absolute best at 2:25, and he goes fourth, the second fastest rather, to second fastest, and that will push Jesse Krohn out of fourth, down to fifth. And at the death of the session, Mauro Engel buys himself another couple of laps in Q2, an 8:12.376, Joe Bradley.
Absolutely outstanding. Mauro Engel, as I've said, Johnny, there's a reason why you would plug a driver like Mauro Engel in. Just look at that timing screen. Sheldon van der Linde, Mauro Engel, Matthew Jaminet, Caroli, Krohn, Van Toor. There's a reason why these drivers were picked for this qualifying session. That man really did perform there, and I'm amazed that he just missed out ever so slightly. 8:12.3 in comparison to the fastest time from the Van der Linde BMW, car number 98, was an 8:11.039. That was an outstanding lap from Van der Linde.
In many ways, Jesse Krohn can feel a little bit disappointed he didn't get a charge of second lap. The second lap was taken away with Engel starting last, which you often think is the most dangerous place to start for other people falling off the track. Played in his hands, they actually cleared the trouble in sector 3, and he was able to get through fast. The top 5 or 6 cars only got one lap.
And Van Toor as well. Van Toor was disadvantaged with that problem at the Hudson back. So we perhaps haven't seen the full potential from them, and just outside of the top 4. So that's their deal over, I'm afraid.
Yes, so it'll be a 21st place start for Schubert Motorsport. That now confirmed in the number 20 car. You do not want to be 5th or slower in this session, but those that will progress, the 98 Rover Racing BMW, thanks to Sheldon van der Linde, who set a very swift time at his first attempt. That means that both of the Rover Racing BMWs will feature in qualifying 2 in a very short time indeed. Then Mauro Engel, who couldn't have left it later, to snatch second place, and ultimately that 4th spot up for grabs with an 8:12.376. 27 was the TalkSport WRT car of Mathieu Jaminet, and that means that we're going to see a different driver at the wheel of the 27 car in the form of Julian Andlauer in due course, and the 28 Porsche of Dynamic Motorsport. So a BMW, a Mercedes, and 2 Porsches move on into qualifying 2. And now we need to allow time for those cars to circulate on the Grand Prix circuit, come back into pit lane to be met by their teams and re-prep
by
for
scrutineering first.
Well, probably.
I can see them there. They're rolling into scrutineering there. The Mauro Engel with the bright pink and blue magnesium water sponsored car. That's rolling into scrutineering right now. I'm sure it'll be a very basic check just for minimum weight and that sort of stuff. And then push and check that the tyres are legal, obviously, not some sort of special formulation. And that'll go then back through the back of the paddock into the its pit lane.
How close was Sheldon van der Linde coming out of Sabine Schmidt's curve there and onto the Hudson back, virtually brushing that Armco barrier, which is a bridge over one of the internal roads here, many of them at the Nürburgring. But you have to push that hard to ensure you get a good time.
To be 1.3 seconds quicker than anyone else. Yeah, that's the margin of error, and that's what I mean about the pressure, the intensity of this qualifying session, where you've got to just. We talk about optimizing the car setup and performance. You've got the car set up exactly where you want it. You've got the aero balance right, but then we kind of take for granted the human element. There's a human being in there pushing those pedals and turning that steering wheel and getting those gears at just the right moments and optimizing that run. And let's not take that for granted, shall we? That's, these guys are very, very talented race drivers.
Yeah, it's interesting because it is a big gap from third to second. So you wonder whether he slightly angled the risk and reward too much towards reward at that point to be 1.3 seconds to everything else. But
you could say that in hindsight, Nick. Yeah.
Well,
why did you go so quickly?
Yeah, stop it.
You know,
slower.
You know, why did you didn't have to chance it. No, I mean, you know, outstanding performance, and the time came to him.
Yeah.
So we know, because the draw's already taken place for qualifying 2, where those 4 cars are now going to fit in, because position 3 is going to be the 3rd car off, which will be the 27 TalkSport WRT car, qualified initially by Mathieu Jaminet, but it'll be taken over by Julian Anlauer. The round of applause you can hear in the background, by the way, is for South African Sheldon van der Linde, who has just arrived back with Rover Racing, and he did the business for BMW, which will ensure that Nicky Katzberg gets a chance to be involved in qualifying 2. And remember, Nicky Katzberg, up until this point, had been the fastest driver all week with an 8:14.771, rather putting that in the shade, Sheldon van der Linde, but I realised that car was on very, very low fuel and virtually a clear road in front. But it means an awful lot to Rover Racing to get their 2nd car into the 2nd qualifying session, and they're within a chance, definitely, because of the M4's pace this week, of locking out the front row positions. Wouldn't that be a story to see the 98 and the 99, regardless of which order, in those top 2 spots? But there are 3 other major German manufacturers out to stop them. And as we continue the build-up to qualifying 2, we're having a little bit of a shake around in our commentary box as well. A great thanks to Joe Bradley and Nick Damon, who we'll be hearing from much more tomorrow and Sunday during the 50th running of the 24 hours of the Nürburgring. So they bail out of their cars, if you like, and new pilots in, Ben Constanduras and Peter Snowden. Well, that was exciting enough, Ben. We're going to do it all again now with theoretically even quicker cars.
One interesting observation that we saw from that previous session was those last 3 cars that we saw over the line, they were interrupted by the yellow flag at the start of the lap. The KTM was ahead of them, so Pittard, Pilet and Engel were not able to do fast laps on their first laps because they had to be slow through the yellow flag. Gotcha. Engel was over a second slower than perhaps he could have been on that first lap, and because it was so tight at the head of the field, that was enough to put him 8th, 9th after that first lap, but obviously he had the pace to be able to improve on the second lap.
Yeah, and you've always got to remember that one incident on the track is going to affect the next cars through, but those that were waved away at the back of a 20-car field are no doubt going to catch the sort of start of that incident for Ferdinand Stuck. So their first lap affected, they were therefore much faster the second time around. And yeah, you're right to point that out, because we were getting very excited about those cars that were going to be the next ones through at Hatzenbach. And unfortunately, Jesse Krohn took the headlines for his 3rd sector being heavily delayed, and there wasn't a great deal he could have done about that, because there was a code 60 in place. You can't go quicker than 60 kilometres per hour through the affected area, and he did absolutely the right thing in backing things off. So Snowy, a reset as far as the track is concerned might even give some of the marshals a chance to sweep and make conditions even better. There is an awful lot of luck of the draw about this session. You know, the cars have been plucked out at random. Mauro Engel, by the way, getting the handshakes, the high fives because of his very late work. His car picked out as the last one off, but I had a feeling we were going to get something a bit special from the Munich Maestro.
Exactly so, Johnny. That which Ben just said, absolutely right. The car stuck there, stranded, you get a section, but it's a code 60. It can't be helped, the luck of the draw, and just unfortunate. It is frustrating. It's as frustrating as it's possible to be frustrated in this, because it's qualifying. But there's always the other side, that it's the top 10. That's what you need to be in. That's where TF Sport are. We spoke to Tom Perrier during the lunch break, and he said, you know, if we're in the top 10, that's ideal, because, as you said yesterday, Johnny, I suggested that you don't need to be that high up at the front of a grid in a 24-hour race. Yes, but you do. But you want to keep out of trouble.
Exactly.
The two things of endurance racing: stay out of the pit, stay out of trouble. If you get into the midfield, you get into all sorts of other people's classes, speed differentials. You want to be with your peer group, so that's okay for them. But interesting there. I thought we've seen this in NLS this year. Johnny, with the BMW, the new M4 GT3 car. It's been the class act. It's been the car to have, with 3 different teams proving how good that car is. The BMW Junior team, Rover Racing, Valkenhorst Motorsport. 3 different teams, always got different ways of running a car, but the same product. It's obviously it's there. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. A lot of the time, 1, 2, 3, 5 or something, whatever. But is this going to be the weekend where it changes? It's 24 hour. It's totally different. We're now seeing it's still one at the top at the moment. But we're seeing other cars knocking on the door there, chipping away. I also predict, I'm going to risk it here now. I heard that sharp intake of breath there, Johnny. I thought earlier on it's a little bit cooler now. I would not be surprised if we see 810s.
Yeah.
In this, I think it was 808 last year.
808.
Yeah.
Well, Farfus did an 808 in the qualifying weekend, I think, for top qualifying for that.
But also how close it is at the top, Johnny. We're talking 2.3 seconds across the top 10.
Yeah,
it's like a one-make formula, and it's not. We've got how many different brands in there, different ideas to set up, different teams on the Nordschleife, over so many more opportunities over 25 kilometres to make different errors, mistakes, and whatever. But you're still 1.3 seconds across. 2.3 seconds across 10 cars. Just goes to show the level of prep and professionalism in all these teams.
One of the fascinating things, as you were talking, I was listening, but I was also form filling, because there's quite a lot of admin that you have to do here to work out where the top 4 cars will slot into the new qualifying order. The way they've come out of the hat is the first car to be waved off in qualifying 2 will be the 101 Valkenhorst Motorsport BMW M4 of Christian Krognes. Now, the qualifiers, 27 had just been qualified by Mathieu Jaminet. You can't use the same driver in each of the sessions, so it'll be Julian Anlauer second time out, and he'll start as the 3rd car to be waved off. Jules Gounon will take over the Mercedes number 4 that Maro Engels just exited. He'll start 4th. Then you've got Thomas Preining in the 28 Porsche to start from 8th. But the really interesting thing for me is the way they've qualified. The 2 Rover Racing BMWs will be waved off together, effectively, 10 seconds apart, but they'll be 11th and 12th. Now, are we going to see a bit of sneaky first car just backs off a little bit to allow a tow down the Dottinger Hohe to the flag, and then they can repay the favour next time around?
One word: teamwork.
I mean, that is a bit of luck, I would say, that they have found one another in the middle order, right in the middle, 11th and 12th, with already designated driver Augusto Farfus in the 99 and Nicky Katzberg to take over the 98.
The theory is fantastic, isn't it? And we see it so much in those slightly lower-powered touring car races, for instance. But there are so many corners, there are so many kilometres on this circuit for the driver ahead to make a mistake. A little mistake will cost both cars a lap. And when you've only got 2 laps to do it in, is it really worth the risk? All right, around the Dottinger Hohe, it's great. You can just sit there flat out. But there are too many corners to really, for me, take that risk to do so, even if Farfus and Katzberg are absolutely mega drivers.
You'd need one to compromise one of their 2 laps in order to pay a favour to the other.
How many corners is there? 140, 150?
I think it goes up one every year. I keep coming back here, but there's too much. I mean, that was mainly in jest. There's way too much to lose if you try and mess about with the formula. But nevertheless, it's going to be interesting, because I'm sure that's entered Rover Racing's mind purely about not tripping over one another as they start nose to tail for this second session, which is, by the way, just over 7 minutes away, Ben.
Of course, if you ask Katzberg and Farfus if they were able to do it, they would say, yeah, we would never make a mistake.
Yeah, natürlich. Yeah, of course. Yeah, but it's not going to happen. But that's what a team manager has got to process and organise and manage. Quite literally, team manager is the drivers will want to do that. Now, obviously, the worst thing, the flip side of that is, of course, Johnny Ben, that the worst thing you want to do is trip over your teammate, and in that moment of, not madness, but in that moment of wanting to do a little bit better, drivers want to do that. Telling a racing driver to go slowly doesn't really happen very often.
Yeah.
I'm now thinking of the downsides of all of this, because if like the previous session, you get a car off, they're both on the same bit of track together. Yeah. So you're going to get the compromise at the same time, and there's no way really of separating them. I've talked myself massively out of that argument now, and I would prefer to have one car at the front and one car at the back of the 20.
I've said it for a long time, Johnny, that you would make a great politician, because you can explain both sides of the stories eloquently and believably.
Thanks. Yeah. So, you go with whichever argument I've just presented, and I will win either way.
I'm going to go with the body language expert in this this team of commentators. Just watching Mauro Engel there talking to Jules Gounon back in the pit garages, and Engel didn't look very happy. He wasn't the kind of a man who's just achieved something great. He looked like he struggled a little bit with the car. He was describing how the car was oversteering a little bit, had a bit of a snap at one point. I'm obviously taking this all from his conversation we couldn't hear but just see. But certainly didn't look like a man who just achieved something great. And so I think maybe they're still chasing something in that Mercedes.
About 5.5 minutes away from the session, and the crowds are back again in force in 2022. We have really missed them over the last couple of years for obvious reasons, but that pumping dance music, and if you get even deeper into the forest, it turns into thrash metal. When you move from one area of the campsite into the other, there's kind of no fade between that music. It's just like a wall of sound that hits you. And a lot of fans here, almost the fact that there's a racing event is secondary. They've come out with their mates during Ascension weekend. It's a 4-day weekend here in Germany, and they've clearly had this booked off work for probably a year or more. But isn't it fabulous to have, particularly at the Mercedes Arena, you know, the grandstand stacked full of fans?
It's also, when you're driving around, you think a driver's have got these emotions of driving the car, etc. But this, you are aware of everything going on around you. And not only is it sounds and stuff, and you can hear bits of music and stuff going around, but it's also some of the smells and things you get, and people get barbecues going, and there's bits where you know they've obviously eaten already because the smell's gone, so it's been cooked and gone. There are other senses that are affected as you're driving around, and it's quite extraordinary when you get out into the night and you're thinking, oh, okay, that's interesting.
Well, if you get a lot of barbecues, almost what feels like a mist descends, but it's just smoke, and you've got to
be a brat mist.
Yeah, I think it has to be, yes. and it's the ever-changing nature of the Eiffel Mountains, whether you know, down to humans or down to the natural weather changes we get here through the day. I mean, when we arrived here early this morning, there was that typical mist hanging low, I should say, in the valley. Thankfully, conditions couldn't be a lot better this evening for qualifying. And the sun is going to get lower, although sunset's not going to be until about 9:30 tonight. So I don't think blinding sunlight is going to be an issue.
And this little breeze as well that we've got, it's not too strong, but there's enough to clear anything that might be lingering. So if we do have the cold temperatures that we are forecast for on Sunday morning, as long as that breeze sticks around, it will blow the fog away. And of course, we've been heavily compromised by fog the last 2 years. We desperately do not want fog. We don't seem to have massively poor weather forecast across the weekend. There's a possibility of a little bit of rain, and we found that coming into the circuit this morning, it was drizzly and miserable and quite English, really. But it has developed, as it does in the UK, into a beautiful evening.
Well, we saw the classic race this morning, didn't we? With more cars on the circuit than we got in this race. 187, I think it was.
Really?
In the classic race this morning, and it got to that awful stage of a racetrack where it's not one or the other. It's that greasy in-between bit, which is the most lethal, and then you ran the Nordschleife as well. So, but I think you're right, Ben. I don't think rain's going to be an issue this race, as he touched wood, touching my head, hopefully. But I think the fog early in the morning, that might, I think, predicted to come down to 3 degrees.
Okay.
Early hours, sort of 7-ish. Dawn, around about then. So that's the issue. Will it bring the fog in, and is there going to be enough, you said, the wind to clear it?
Yeah.
There might be some fog. How long does it stay there? That's what we need to get rid of.
Otherwise, we could be potentially on for a record lap-setting distance, because it is not looking particularly wet conditions, and therefore we should have. I mean, we are a lot more aware of incidents these days than perhaps we were a few years back, so we're more careful when it comes to removing cars off the track, and therefore yellow flag zones, code 60 zones, things like that. So that might compromise the ability to go the longest distance ever, but there's still a possibility in terms of the weather.
So we'll focus on the matter in hand, because now the second drivers of those 4 that have now qualified for Q2 are being installed, and those designated at the start of the day for the already qualified cars are getting ready for that as well. And I suppose there's an element of doubt in the mind of Julian Anlauer, Jules Gounon, Thomas Preining and Nicky Katzberg as to whether they would be taking part tonight, but you can very quickly switch the mind on. These are world-class GT3 drivers, and unfortunately for Ferdinand Stuck, he didn't get much further than Hatson back, and the 117 True Racing KTM is having to be craned away. Only now are the crews, who are always very quick to the scene of the crime, having the chance to recover this vehicle. So we might be a little bit late off than planned, due to be underway in just under a minute, Ben.
We are releasing the cars onto the grid, of course, to then release them away.
Yeah.
So we are on the Nordschleife where the KTM is broken down, so we can still get the cars onto the grid, and hopefully by the time we've done that and all that tomfoolery that we had a little bit earlier on with the Glickenhaus pausing and it actually ending up not being able to set a lap time, we can do that part of it, and hopefully the KTM is off the circuit in one piece, we should hasten to add. So that is a technical issue rather than an issue that Stuckey had in terms of driving. That car expired going onto the Nordschleife.
And it's not too far away, so they can get it back to the pits and get working on it ASAP, because what else were they going to do with themselves this evening apart from repair it? They weren't going to relax, were they?
We were talking about record distances. I thought it was a fine time to bring in that actual record distance, which was set in 2014 at 159 laps, when Christopher Haase, Christian Mamero, René Rast and Marcus Winkelhock won for Phoenix. To put that into perspective, 159 the record. We were 100 laps short of that last year. 59 laps, because it was less than 10 hours of actual running, let alone racing. You know, much of the running that took place was affected by Code 60 and by yellow flags. And that was the new shortest distance in 2021.
But the last time we had clean running in 2019, we were only 2 laps shy of that. 2 years before that, because the 2018 race was red flag for 2 hours, we were only 1 lap short of it. So if we have a dry race all the way through, it's very possible that we can go to the 160, the magic 160.
And you think about the development that's taken place since that record year in 2014 to GT3 machines. You know, the lap time will have come down an awful lot, even on full tanks. So, yeah, the potential's there, folks. We're trying to build it up for you, and the fact that the weather conditions do look promising, if the low mist strikes, it's less about visibility for drivers and more about post-to-post visibility for the marshals, because they need to be able to know which flags and which lights are being shown at any point. That KTM did not crash, gentlemen.
No.
Well, we knew it didn't crash. We had a technical, but that's quite an obvious technical, Snowy.
Yeah, right rear tyre failure, completely.
Well, it's not on.
No,
it's on.
I think it's a wheel, actually. I think you're right. The rims with it as well. I thought the tyre delaminating was coming out. You're absolutely right, Ben. Your eyes are younger than mine, you see, so they're better. But yes, I just thought it was a tyre, but the wheel is completely off there. So as long as he was looking quite happy about loading the car up, wasn't he? So what's that telling me, body language expert? I know you are, Ben. What it's telling me is that he's not sitting there thinking, oh, this is over, how much work they do. As long as it's only something like a hub failure, as in a hub nut or something, it's fine.
I think the car has been lifted onto
better at the Hatson back than anywhere else.
Well, yes, exactly. The car's been lifted onto the flatbed with only 3 wheels on it. I think he's still got the 4th wheel down by his ankles. So
sitting here?
Yeah, he'll be taking that back to the team and going, why is this separated to that bit of the car?
And as Ferdinand was crawling along, sensibly staying off the racing line, David Pittard steaming past him, because, I mean, he will have seen the odd yellow flag, but he was not holding up, but because he needed clearly to get the pace through the Hatson back, wanting not to be ensconced into a Code 60 if it happened around him. So he probably thought, I need to get out of here, quick, smart, and pass the stricken car.
There's a reason I gave him his nickname.
Pitbull.
Pitbull, Pittard. There's a reason.
Yeah, so unfortunately for David, it was really all on the second lap, and he wasn't able to make that top 4. So we're not going to see an Aston Martin in Q2, but we are going to see Audis, Mercedes, BMWs. Is there a Ferrari in there? There's a Lamborghini in there. The Conrad Motorsport Lambo has made it in. And the Octane 126 Ferrari, together with Porsches, of course, as well. And a couple of those making it through from Q1. So cars getting their final bits of preparation, including the 3 and the 4 from Team Get Speed. The BWT-backed cars heading out onto track. I don't know what the confusion was between the 3 and the 4. As I say, for a long time this weekend, it was the 3 that needed to get in, and the 4 was already pre-qualified. But then when the official list came out, the cars were reversed. So anyway, Engel did the business, and the number 4 car is into Q2 now with Jules Gounon to qualify. And if you're interested, the number 3 car is going to be driven by Maximilian Goertz, sharing with, amongst others, Adam Christodoulou this weekend. Ooh, lollipop lifted for the number, was that the 3? Yes, with Fabian Schiller's name on the roof as well, and very quickly lowered again to avoid an unsafe release. Thankfully, contact was avoided there. And fans really up for this second phase of qualifying. There are going to be 20 cars released as they were in the previous session. 4 of them carried over from one to the other. And we're not just tacking them onto the back. Actually, some decent starts up the order for all of the 4 cars that have progressed.
Do some of these cars have that penalty looming over them? Because we've seen a lot of penalties handed out in qualifying which dictate they must start at the back of their starting group, some with a 2-minute penalty, some 20 cars, I think, in total. And so whilst we might be showing the fastest cars in this top qualifying, they might not actually start at the front of the grid.
Yeah, well, the big one in all of that is actually last year's winner, Manthey Racing, because a tweet from Lawrence Vantel, we were chatting about this earlier in the broadcast, suggesting to us that Manthey will not be taking part in Q2 at all. And I am not seeing the Grello liveried, that's green and yellow, folks, the Grello liveried Porsche from Manthey. So they have thought we're going to have to start at the back of a 60-odd car field in Startgruppe 1. Let's not risk the car and park it for Friday and join the grid. Well, they might spend some time in warm-up tomorrow morning, but otherwise join the grid for a 4 o'clock start on Saturday afternoon. Car 101 is going to be started by Christian Krognes with the Yokohama Advans fitted and with the black and white branding on one of 3 BMWs from Henry Valkenhorst's team, or family Valkenhorst's team. And this is the Pro car, the other 2 being Pro-Ams. Christian Krognes, part of a lineup that won the Spa 24 Hours just a couple of years ago. Norwegian driver to kick things off, therefore. And slotting in behind, we haven't got yet Nico Bastian for the Bilstein Mercedes crew in another Pro-Am car. But parking up in his rightful position is Julian Andlauer in the black of Toksport WRT. And here now, as mentioned, Nico Bastian arriving. He's the gold in this 4-driver lineup, which also includes Hubert Haupt, with the number 2 flashing, but BAS telling us that Bastian is on board as the elected driver for qualifying. So grid starting to take shape, gentlemen. And for those fairly early on parade, just a matter of collecting your thoughts, maybe visualising those 170-odd corners, Ben.
And without the distraction of a million fans around and various festivities at this grid on Saturday afternoon, will be absolutely rammed full of another opportunity to marvel at the spectators and the way that the celebrations around this race have continued and grown over the years, because we really will see an incredible... I'm assuming it'll be open to the public, as it has been the last couple of years.
I don't see why not.
You sometimes have music on there. You certainly have grid girls brought in from the team as well as from the organisers. And that will be such a special way to kick the event off. But a lot of drivers find it heavily distracting. They don't like all of the fuss, and they were much happier to sit in a car with nobody on the grid and focus, Snowy.
Quite right. That's what you're here for. It's your job.
Well, there's often so many spectators. I mean, I have been down on the grid ahead of the start of the race in previous years, and you struggle to find the cars.
Yes, exactly.
You know, and if you want a late comfort break before getting on board, if you're doing the opening stint, where's my car parked? Where's the team? And you don't need that extra stress. However...
the seat.
You could use a seat, but
Not
sitting still on the grid? Come on, Snowy, you've been brought up better than that.
You correctly so, but you haven't got time.
I just noticed, by the way, and I'm sure many of our other eagle-eyed fans will have noticed that the Dynamic Motorsport Porsches are on Pirellis for this year's race. So majority of Porsches on Michelins, because in Carrera Cup Championships the 2 are married up, but Dynamic, Italian team, so maybe it's an obvious choice to go with Pirellis for car 28 and car 29.
Cairoli part of that team. that's got the car through into this second session of qualifying. Obviously a winner last year, but a winner in the number 1 machine, so moving teams for this year.
Still, the mood of the crowd is being revved up ahead of the wave off for these cars. And yeah, Ben's pointing out to me that the 2 Get Speed cars are together on the grid as well.
Yeah, we talked about Rover.
We did, and that has completely passed me by. But because the number 4 car bagged second place late on, they will start 4th. And Maxi Gertz, that's Jules Gounon in the first car, Maxi Gertz right behind in the number 3 car. So they're going to be nose to tail as well.
Well, let's see if which strategy they employ. Got a couple of different teams to have different approaches.
The scars of a number of cars running wide down at the Yokohama S from a busy day of racing here at the Nürburgring Nordschleife. Cars of all sorts of different heritages, but these are the most modern racing this weekend. And in the case of the M4, a brand new in its first season GT3 machine.
And is it the most
numerous?
Numerous in this session?
Good question. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 BMWs. Mercedes will run that close. 5 of the AMGs as well. We've got, from an Audi perspective, I make it 4. Porsches, 1, 2, 3, 4 of those 911 GT3R Generation 2s. There's the Lamborghini of Conrad Motorsport, and there's the Ferrari in its bright gold wrap for 2022 from Octane 126. First car waved away. That's Christian Krognes, swiftly followed by Nico Bastian for Bilstein.
Seems rather fair, branding-wise. Make sure everyone's covered. Equal opportunities for all. Well,
I mean, balance of performance is so crucial in GT3, and it's a global category, of course, but the stewards have to be so on point around here. The good thing is virtually every corner known to man is on this lap, so if a car's going to be good through the slow stuff, then another car should be good on the quick, dotting a hoor. But yeah, it's about how you make that time across 24 hours as well. So tricky to get it right, and all the variables in between, because you know the smallest incident, even just a KGM losing a wheel, as we saw in the first session, should that happen in the race, you'll be into a yellow flag zone followed by speed limits. But the yellow flag zones have always been, for me, a chance to catch up, sometimes a 10-second gap, because if you've got a slower car, if you're behind, for instance, the Dacia Logan going into yellow flags, yes, you can't overtake it, but you can gain an awful lot of time.
What are you saying about the Dacia?
Only that it's not a GT3 car. I love the branding on the back of the Dacia. It says Dacia versus Goliath, and that is spot on for me. And fair play to all those involved in that initiative to get it back. I know it's done a few NLSs. We are missing the Opel Manta this year. Often, so many times we've said that a Nürburgring 24 hours cannot run officially, according to the regulations, without an Opel Manta in the field. And they did try desperately to get it here, but a hiccup, well, there was a fire, wasn't there? We did a lot of damage to that car in the run into this race, so hopefully in the near future that'll come back again to the ring.
Well, it was due to be its last race, wasn't it? It was going to be retired in this race, as in the 50th running of it. It was all the right things to do that, and of course that fire damage. I've seen photographs of it, and it's I'm not saying it'll polish out, but there was still a lot of colour left on the car, put it that way, as in it's an engine bay cockpit fire internally, so it's not burnt to a cinder, but it's it'd be great to see that come back and have it a last swan song. We could see the foxtail out again.
Ben Tuck away in the second of the Vulcan-Horse BMWs from 16th in the order, so that's car 102. Marek Bockman in the Schnitzelarm Racing Mercedes AMG, number 34. Then we get to Jordan Pepper in the teal and black Conrad Motorsport Lamborghini with its 5.2-litre V10, sitting right behind Jordan's seat position. Nico Menzel in the Uber Motorsport 25. They've got an SP7 Porsche in the race as well, but this is the top-notch GT3R. And finally, Dennis Fetzer in the Pro-Am driver lineup for Lion Speed by Car Collection Motorsport, another Evo 2 R8 LMS. So the cars I missed, Julian Andlauer, as mentioned, started third and is already well into Sector 3. Jules Gounon setting off in the number 4 Mercedes from Get Speed with his teammate Maxi Gertz behind. Laurens Vanthoor not on the grid, remember, for Manthey Racing. They were due to start 6th. Kuba Gamaziak for Shearer Sport Team Phoenix, elected as the qualifying driver for car 16. There's been a switch in the number 28 after Matteo Cairoli got that car into the session. Thomas Preining is the Q2 driver. Dan Harper for the BMW Junior Team, number 72. That's another Pro-Am entry, with Neil Verhagen and Max Hesse joining Dan come the race. They started 9th in the lineup. Lucas Stoltz in another Bilstein Mercedes AMG, number 12, is the full pro car. Augusto Farfus and Nicky Katzberg for Rover Racing and their 2 BMWs. Luca Ludwig driving the Octane 126 Ferrari for the Swiss team. Patrick Niederhauser is driving the 24 Car Collection Audi. He also has a teammate behind him, Christopher Haase. So there are 3 separate teams that a quirk of the draw has seen them come out of the hat nose to tail. Mathieu Jaminet already finding his way towards what looked like Metzgersfeld there. The run out of Adenauer Forst. So Krognes furthest up the road. He's already well into Sector 5, which is one of the longer sectors on the track. These times, remember, don't matter. These are just outlaps, effectively. But the next time they head across the stripe, it will be business. And how hard do you push? Do you leave something in reserve so that you've got tyre to lean on in the second lap? The absolute peak performance, bearing in mind this is a 25-kilometre circuit, will just start to go away, regardless of which tyres you've chosen for this event.
I would say potentially not, in that you're absolutely right, John, that it's such a long way round to complete a lap here. You've done 25k on that tyre anyway, so it's fully grained up. Go for it on that first lap, because you might encounter traffic on the second run. If you haven't and you haven't achieved it and you get you've got another bite at the cherry on that second run. But don't wait till that run. Yeah. Get it in there while you can.
There's very little in motorsport that permits you to wait, actually. Go for it whilst it's there, and if you can improve next time around, that's a bonus.
It's a luxury, but of all places that those opportunities can be taken away, it's going to be here. So I'd get it in the bank.
Couple of order changes out on circuit whilst we get ourselves into the warm-up lap. Of course, they can change the order in which they've been drawn. So the first car actually on track now is Nico Bastien in the Bilstein Mercedes, ahead of the Valkenhaus Christian Cronjes car. So he is now leading the pack through. The other one on a real push is Jordan Pepper, who should have been third last, but the Lamborghini has already passed the 3 cars ahead of him, which is the Schnitzelam Mercedes, a Valkenhorst BMW, and Christopher Hasse in the second of the Audi Sport Team Car Collection Audis. So he's actually split those 2 team cars, really on a push to try and get himself in a position where he's potentially not held up going into the fast lap, as has Nico Bastien.
I was about to say that maybe the draw's been done to put the Pro-Am cars towards the rear of the field, but then I look at actually the second car to be waved off, which is the first of the 2 Bilsteins. That's a Pro-Am lineup, as is the BMW Junior Team. But coincidentally, the last 5 cars to be sent away: Valkenhorst 102, Schnitzelarm 34, Conrad 7, Huber 25, and Lion Speed 23. They are all Pro-Ams, but they've got they will have the pros in to qualify.
Exactly, and the cars
it makes
the
no
same.
difference. Yeah,
yeah. So they actually, you might find a Pro-Am machine could, in theory, qualify at the head of the field, even though half the team is the AM drivers. They're not represented in this particular session.
Yeah.
It's not like where you have to get all 3 drivers qualified and then do an aggregate of the times and yada, 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 like the old WEC days, which is very confusing.
True.
It would go on forever if we had to do that here.
Very quick update on the Foxtel Manta just before we finish these laps and get onto the timed laps, Johnny and Ben. But the plan for the Manta apparently was to graduate to the 2023 version of the Classic next year, this be its 24-hour race, when it's prime sort of outing. Graduate to the 23 Classic next year. Now, so what's going to happen is it's going to be rebuilt, apparently, to come out in this race next year.
Mega.
And then do the Classic from 24 onwards.
Okay, I like that a lot, and I'd hoped that might be the case. So Bilstein number 6 Mercedes, Nico Bastien, who is the goal, 32-year-old German, is now out front and will be the first car to pop back onto the Grand Prix circuit from Hohenrhein. He's on the Dottinger Höhe now, running parallel with the street traffic. And again, weaving from left to right. We saw this for leading cars at the end of Q1, at the end of their first lap of Q1. You know, there's every possible moment still to bolster that tyre performance, Snowy.
Yeah, I was quite surprised just watching the Maximilian Goetz and the Get Speed Mercedes doing exactly the same, coming out of Bergwerk on that fast run up towards the Caracciola carousel, and he was doing exactly the same. And I was surprised that far into a lap still to trying to get that heat into it. But they know what they're doing. We're sitting in a commentary box.
Well, I suppose when you're on a straight, actually the tyres are just going to start to cool down again. They're not being worked. Yes, they're at high speed, but you've just got to stress them a little bit in the closing stages. So Nico Bastian in car number 6 over the line to begin properly top qualifying 2. This 2-segment session of dual lap, but solo dual lap qualifying. You've got the Nürburgring Nordschleife to yourself, or at least Nico Bastian has. 1 or 2 further back have dealt with some traffic already, and the question is, who are they likely to catch in the next couple of laps, which might disrupt proceedings? Beautiful paint scheme. Again, this has adorned Audis in the past. Bastian sideways there, coming out of the right-hander and heading for the Dunlop Carer at the bottom of the hill.
He's too early for the drifting, isn't he? Giving it a go there. Just nice little bit opposite lot there. That will have got some heat into the sidewalls.
Certainly will, yeah. And maybe a deliberate ploy to just stress a little further on the Grand Prix lap where there is potential runoff should you need it. You don't want to try that by the time you're getting to Schwedenkreuz and Arenberg. But he's not leaving much on the table here, Ben.
No, great first push through the first sector. Not many cars, nice gaps between all these cars. So for the moment, the ones that have come across the line don't look like they will catch or be compromised by the traffic ahead of them. But of course, Nico Bastian definitely doesn't have that worry. And I said when we were watching Q1, what a pleasure this must be to be in a GT3 car, almost knowing that you'll never come across another car in the middle of the circuit, which is your fear throughout the rest of the weekend, that there are slower cars around. You have to drive at 95% just in case there is the need to take avoiding action. But right now, there is nothing in the way of Bastian and the Nordschleife together in beautiful conditions, beautiful light. We don't have any rain on the track. He's got brand new tyres, and he can push as hard as he wants.
All the boxes ticked, quite literally, and racing drivers dream of this moment. I think they do secretly like an incredibly busy lap around the Nordschleife as well, and the challenge that presents. The only one thing is he's going through areas of extreme light and then shade as well, which will take the eye a little bit to adjust because the trees are overhanging on several sections of Hatzenbach. But if you've not become used to that over the last 2 days, you might as well go home now. Nico Bastian just soaking this up and enjoying it as much as he can, at the same time keeping those concentration levels up to 100%. And not really. I was just about to say, using every bit of the track available to him, but keeping it within the white lines. There, though, Snowy, he didn't.
Well, he just missed the apex on the right there and just ran a little bit there, but just kicked up a little bit of dust there. That will have annoyed him. It won't have cost him anything more than probably a little bit of pride and just a little bit annoyed there if you want that perfect lap. But there's 170 corners to get right in this lap. So as long as he's up there on the times, 2 purple sectors set already for Nico Bastian. So looking like a good out lap, or good, sorry, not out lap, good first timed lap for him.
Can you ever do a perfect lap of the Nordschleife?
No, of course
that many
not.
corners and that many kilometres? I'm not sure.
I think most drivers will admit that the perfect lap is just imaginary. It's interesting that all weekend on our timing screen we have got a column that reads theoretical best when you join together all of the perfect sector times for your car, but that, to me, that's just one of those things just slightly out of your grasp, Snowy.
Yeah, just delete that column. It's never helpful.
Pointless, but it's useful for reference to know that it is possible at least, but there are a number of variables before you get there.
But that's what team managers use to beat you with a stick.
I'm sure. Yeah. Great ammunition. I was about to give the Octane 126 Ferrari a bit of love because in the first half of the Grand Prix track, the Octane 126 488 had been the fastest car out there, but that's been improved upon again by a car outside of the top 10. So who's gone even faster? It's Jordan Pepper in another non-German car, the Conrad Motorsport Lamborghini. You and I, Snowy, have had some conversations about the likelihood of well, not necessarily a winner on Sunday, but a pole sitter that isn't from one of the 4 major German marques. And I have to say, the early pace of both the Ferrari and the Lamborghini is encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, that Lamborghini, it's and certainly Jordan Pepper aboard, it's never lacked pace. That's never been an issue. It's just lacked luck. That's always been its problem, and reliability, unfortunately. But some silly things. I mean, it's had a puncture once. It's had a wheel bearing failure in an NLS round. I mean, when does that happen? It's just unheard of, and just silly things like that. Pace is there. It just needs to. It might be one of those cars though that can't do a 4-hour NLS race and might just surprise us in a 24-hour race.
Such as the field spread of our field after that single lap. We see about 4.5 minutes between our first car, which is Nico Bastien, and our last car, which is the Lion Speed by Car Collection, which came over the line about 45 seconds ago. So nearly 4 minutes between the first and the last car. All just trying to find their feet. There was no need to push on that opening lap because it wasn't a timed lap. They started from a stationary position, but that is how long it will take to fully establish who is our fastest man. And of course, it's also going to stretch a little bit as we do these 2 laps.
Yeah, and decision to be made perhaps for Jordan Pepper as to if he can get close enough to Marek Bachmann and Ben Tuck ahead of him to get by, if at all possible. He is already ahead.
Yeah.
Well, I wondered that because, as I say, he's in amongst Pro-Am cars there, but Jordan Pepper, gold rated from South Africa, and joining Axel Jeffries, Michele Martino, and the 4th driver in that Lamborghini has changed quite recently, actually. It's now going to be Maximilian Hacklander brought in to make that a 4-driver lineup rather than the 3 that it was originally labelled as on the roof of the Lambo, Franz Conrad's team.
Just as this unfolds in front of us, boys, we've talked about 810s when I get down to this. The lap record on this configuration is Augustus Farfus in an 808. I think it's a 421, 808.
Yeah.
Who's out on track at the moment? Who's setting quick sector times?
Is it Augusto Farfus,
It might just be.
Yeah, in the 99 Rover Racing BMW. So 99 and 98 left the main straight virtually together, 10 seconds apart, but otherwise no cars between them. And yes, you're right that he's pushing incredibly hard through those sectors that mean a great deal, i.e. Hatzenbach, Flugplatz, Schwedenkreuz. Then there's a sort of 10-second sector time, but the 1:45 is decent, which is sector 5, and sector 7 so crucial, because if you can get through that in about 2 minutes and 25 seconds, it's always a long wait for the cars to reappear on our screen at the end of sector 7, but that can be so pivotal for the run onto Dottinger Hohe. So Nico Bastien still the leading car, if you like. Christian Krognes, the second car that you will see around the track. Mathieu Jaminet didn't know he was going to be in this session at the start of the day, but his teammate, labelled as Jaminet, that should be Julian Andlauer, in fact, for this session. And Andlauer taking over for Q2 is up to 7 minutes, so he'll be home in the next minute and 20 seconds or thereabouts. There'll be Bastien first across the line. 2:25 is bang on the money for me through sector 7. That was set by Christian Krognes. Bastien's time just 3/10 off that, and he's done the first bit of the Dottinger Hohe in under 20.5 seconds. Down through the gears for the Mercedes, exiting Hohenrhein now, and the first of 2 Bilstein liveried Mercedes in this session will cross the line over the 8-minute 10 marker. It's an 8:12.326 for Nico Bastien, and that's a very decent marker to be laying down, at least for your first effort, Ben.
Yeah, watch out for Thomas Preining in the Dynamic Motorsport Porsche. He's had some purple sectors, good purple sectors, as we mentioned, in the middle of the lap for Augusto Farfus. Jordan Pepper has some nice clear track ahead of him, so he's been able to be on pace as well. Even in sectors 5, we're still seeing the Ferrari setting purples, so lots of pace. And I think it's so close in this session that until they get across the line, we're not going to know what kind of pace they're at. Well, Mathieu Jaminet, 1.5 back and forth right now, the cars that have set a lap time.
Christian Krohn's just on the Valkenhorst BMW, just gone 8:11.8 to top the timesheets now. It's now just been beaten by Kuka Maziak
Yes.
in the Audi R8 with a 8:11.6 coming thick and fast now.
Yeah, which is one of the two Phoenix cars in this session. So Kuba, 31-year-old from Poland, a Meister when it came to the Porsche Super Cup. But has gravitated to Audi in more recent years, and an 8:11.670 then for the pole to dispatch Christian Krognes from provisional pole position. But there's only 0.175 of a second between those two. The Audi from the BMW, then the first Mercedes, which is Luca Stolz in the number 12 offering from Bilstein. So you got Bilstein Mercedes that were, or that are, fourth and fifth gents.
Junior team BMW up to provisional pole, a 10.6, but we're still waiting for the Ferrari to get to us. Luca Ludwig should be on pace as Augusto Farfus goes fastest by 9/10 of a second. So Farfus ahead of Harper, but now Ludwig does get the pole position.
Luca Ludwig, I told you about the Octane 126 Ferrari being pretty nifty on the Grand Prix track. Well, on the Goodyear tyre for the Ferrari 488, provisional pole, it's an 8:09.469. So that's the first sub 8 minutes 10-second lap. And he has done that by a massive margin, 1.1 seconds, kind of unheard of. What we haven't yet had time for is Jordan Pepper's Lamborghini, who conveniently appears on the screen in front of me. He's now on the Dottinger Hoor, having been quicker than anybody else through the first sector. That is only about 40 seconds, though. I'm intrigued to know how Jordan Pepper's got on in the longer sector, 2:26. There are cars that have gone about 1.3 seconds faster than that, so it might not be good enough to skip ahead of Luca Ludwig, but there is a Ferrari potentially on pole position here with one more lap to do for virtually everyone in the session. Fourth place for Jordan Pepper, an 8:11.462, gained a lot of time on the Grand Prix track as mentioned, and that run through Hatzenbach was very good as well. To be lower than a 1:03, you're really pushing.
And it was in the technical fast sweepers around the back of the circuit, Wipperman and Flansgarten, places like that, where the Ferrari was particularly strong in Sector 7 and a little bit earlier on the lap in Sector 5, which is a little bit more of a flat-out section. So good top speed from the Ferrari. Now, how many will push for another lap? How many have got the ability to go even faster again? Otherwise, that discussion that you guys had at lunchtime may well come true, because we have a non-German branded machine on the front of the provisional grid.
Two Italian cars on the front two rows provisionally at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's quite extraordinary. But that time for Luca Ludwig in the Ferrari, as you say, 1.2 seconds ahead. Just that's extraordinary. So that new gold livery obviously really suiting that Octane 126. And the background to that apparently was because Simon Triller had that big accident in the last NLS round, which ended up destroying that chassis. So it's a brand new car. And I went and asked them a couple of days ago why the colour change. They've always been traditionally dark blue and red. And they said, new car, new chassis, new race. Why not?
New Octane 126. Well, at this stage, it seems to be a good move with the Ferrari faster than an awful lot of other cars that will have been many people's favourites, including Augusto Farfus in the number 99 car. Now, he is capable, when conditions are right, of an 8:08. And 0.4, I think we said it was, 0.441. So that is a further second quicker than Luca Ludwig, potentially. How much in reserve has the Brazilian got, I wonder? Second fastest so far for the Rover Racing BMW. All of the top 8, where they are positioned at the moment, are cars that knew they were into Q2 at the start of the day. The quickest of the cars that joined this session, I reckon, is the Bilstein car, number 6 so far. With Jules Gounon down in 13th position. Katzberg is 12th so far. And Julian Andlauer, despite what the TV graphics are saying, it is Andlauer in the car rather than Mathieu Jaminet, and he managed a 14th place with an 8:13.3.
And Andlauer is actually in a brand new chassis as well. We heard from TalkSport that they had been struggling with their previous Porsche, so they brought a brand new car, and its first outing was qualifying 1 yesterday. That was their shakedown, in effect. Got that car to a point that was much better than what they found in the previous chassis. So solved the issue that they've been having in the previous NLS races by simply building a new car and getting themselves up now into a pace which is comparable. In fact, they are only second fastest Porsche out there.
Johnny, you mentioned that the Octane Ferrari had such a good run on that Grand Prix circuit, which is obviously the smallest part. It carried it right through to the rest of the circuit as well, and took the rest of the lap as well, and took that provisional pole position. But the man on the charge at the moment is Jordan Pepper in the Conrad Lamborghini. The first sector, I know it's only the first sector, but nobody's dipped under 40 seconds. 40.1 seconds, 40.2. But Jordan Pepper done a 39.8 in that first sector.
And improved his splits in third and fourth sector as well.
Fourth sector doesn't really count. It's only 700 metres. Don't worry about that one.
And he's only slower in the second sector because, if you remember, he did an incredibly fast second sector of the lap on his first attempt.
Yeah.
So he's not been able to improve on that, but he is so far improving well in the other sectors.
You ready for it? All Italian, front row. How about that?
But the 62.6 seconds through Sector 3 is just about the best offering so far of those circulating at the sharp end. 62.7 for Luca Ludwig in the Ferrari that is heading now to the right-hander on the approach to the carousel. So continuing up the hill with the trees closing in on driver's right. Important for Luca to get the run on from asphalt to concrete just bang on, and I have to say the wheel tracks of that Ferrari perfect over those giant concrete slabs.
Slowing. Is it slowing?
I don't think it is. Still looking good. Heading up the hill, Chris Haase as well in his car collection Audi number 22. He's a bit further back from Luca Ludwig, now approaching the Cacciola with, on the Dottinger Höhe, this is last chance saloon, if you like, for Nico Bastian, car number 6.
Bastian with the second half of a lap, which looks to be better than his previous attempts. You can see the green sectors on sectors 4 through to the end of the lap. So this might be an improvement from 10th position. There are plenty of green sectors showing on the timing screens. Not so many purples. Jordan Pepper's purple in sector 1 still showing. But Nico Bastian's second attempt from 10th position stays in 10th. So significant, those last couple of sectors of the lap.
Yeah.
Yeah, flag is out now, so this is the one that really counts. Jordan Pepper, once again, quickest in sector 6, a 35.1. A couple of tenths up there, which is all important. Those, as you said, sectors 6, 7, 8 and 9. That's really, really important to the end of this lap. So Jordan Pepper's got the Conrad Lamborghini hooked up for the moment.
Over the line goes Christian Krognes, and that was not an improvement either, an 8:12.975. So car 101 will start 7th or lower, because remember there's always a chance for 1 or 2 slower cars on their first attempt to vault above. Jordan Pepper sitting in 4th, a Lamborghini on the ragged edge. Franz Conrad licking his lips here at the prospect of a front row start and maybe even a pole position.
It's qualifying at the Nürburgring 24 hours. That's exactly what Jordan Pepper should be doing in the number 7 Conrad Lamborghini. And no wonder Franz Conrad is sitting there licking his lips going, that's my boy.
Yeah, absolutely is. But he was a little wide coming out of Brunchen, and likewise didn't have a lot of road left on the right-hand side of Eiskurve onto the Dottinger Höhe. No chance of a tow for Luca Ludwig, but he didn't need it last time, and he's gone quicker than anybody else through the long sector on sector 7.
2 minutes 24 in the sector 7 for Luca Ludwig in the number 26 Octane 126 Ferrari. An extraordinary run so far for these 2 Italian cars. They've just been sitting there in the background all this weekend. Is this going to be is this their time to shine in the sun?
Not many improvements on this second lap for many of the cars coming across our line. We've just got Rover coming across and no improvement from them. So Farfus in second position, the second Rover coming across the line, only 13th for Katzberg.
And Katzberg was 12th the first time around, so he's actually lost a spot because of some shuffling above him. So qualifiers from one to the other. Still the best car was Nico Bastian, car number 6 of the 4 that lucked into this late on.
Yeah, Ferrari didn't improve either, so an 8:10.4 from Ludwig. But just these 2 cars, Christopher Haase and Jordan Pepper, looking like they may upset what has otherwise been relatively consistent from the guys ahead of them.
So Audi heading for Tiergarten and Hohenrhein. Christopher Haase, who is third fastest at the moment on an 8:11.210, and the car alongside him on the provisional starting grid also looking to improve. Jordan Pepper's just done a 2:25 through the long sector. What is Christopher Haase going to do? He crosses the line and will stay in third position because he's 0.3 of a second away from improving. Jordan Pepper switches from one side of the grid to the other, fourth to third for the South African. Franz Conrad more than happy with that. He would have loved to have drawn alongside Luca Ludwig to make it an all-Italian front row, but in the end it is a Ferrari from Octane 126 who have got pole position, perhaps against all odds when you consider they were up against the might of BMW, Audi, Mercedes and Porsche, but Ferrari are on pole for the 2022 50th anniversary of the Nürburgring 24 hours, gents.
Well, I have to say, I didn't see that one coming. I really didn't. I'm so pleased that the Italian cars just haven't figured. It's been a German stronghold at the German circuit, why ever not? But it's just so good to see something different up there.
Yeah.
And that's going to make this race, it's going to make the first corner, the first lap fascinating. Two Italian cars in the first three. Amazing.
Still some cars to complete their session, but we're, in a sense, calling out Nico Menzel because he hasn't managed to improve on his own effort. And that is, backed up by the fact that he lost about 7 seconds all told. Some of that will have been knowing that he was down on time and therefore easing back. Dennis Fetzer, as part of the Pro-Am lineup for Lion Speed by Car Collection, about to cross the line as well. This should be an improvement, but a long way short of Luca Ludwig's effort, an 8:09.
There was one improvement late on for Marek Botman. The Schlitzerland Mercedes getting himself up to 15th position after sitting down in 18th.
But in the background, you can hear the sound of Octane 126 celebrating. Their Ferrari, this team from Switzerland, will be starting from pole position at 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. It was Luca Ludwig, the 33-year-old German, who sets the time, and he will be joined during the race by Jonathan Hershey, Simon Trummer and Bjorn Grossman. And that change of livery, because of a pretty horror accident for Simon Trummer not too long ago, has done the business, Snowy. It's a Ferrari that has always looked quick at times during the NLS season that will grab all the headlines tonight.
It shows how much it can change in the blink of an eye, doesn't it? BMW M4 GT3 car has been the car of the class act of the series so far. It's been all this year. That's what the car does around here, around the Nürburgring. Honestly, we've got one on the front row. Okay, Augustus Farfus. We've said he was the lap record holder on this configuration of circuit anyway, so not really surprising. But a Ferrari BMW front row, Lamborghini Audi next, another Audi, and then it's BMW Junior team and the Valkenhorst car, Dan Harper and Christian Krogner's in the Valkenhorst Motorsport car number 101. 72 and 101 there make up the third and fourth BMWs in that. Who'd have thought they'd have been 6th and 7th in this setup? Mercedes, it is Luca Stoltz in the number 12 car, and the Huber Motorsports, Chris Menzel in the 911, and then the Nico Bastian that rounds out the top 10 in the Mercedes, Get Speed Mercedes. So quite not a result I would have predicted. I'm not surprised to see those two Italian cars in there. I thought they'd be most certainly in the top 15 without question, and quite probably in the top 10. Any higher than top 5? No, because I thought it really was going to be BMW, Mercedes, but right at the front there, Ferrari.
So the margin for pole position in the end, a clear second. 1.171 for Luca Ludwig in the Octane 126 Ferrari from the Rover Racing BMW that set an awful lot of tails wagging during the qualifying weekend when Augusto Farfus was piloting it, and he managed an 8:10.640. Not good enough for pole, but he'll start on the front row. Then Jordan Pepper left it late to switch from fourth to third, so the inside of row 2 in the Lamborghini from Conrad Motorsport, and then it was Christopher Haase for Audi. So best Audi will start from fourth. The BMW I've mentioned, two Italian cars in the top 3. Mercedes, best one of those will be the Bilstein offering car number 12. The highest of the Porsches, Huber Motorsports example, number 25, to start from 9th position. And of those 4 cars that qualified late, the 4 that moved from Q1 into Q2, you're looking at 12th, 13th, 14th and 16th of the 16 cars. The punch of the air from Luca Ludwig, climbing out of his car and about to be interviewed by a good number of press members. Patrick Simon is down there for local TV as well. But, I mean, how much is that down to tyres as well? Because there aren't that many Goodyear shod machines in the race. Goodyear have brought plenty of tyres for cars lower down in the classes. But from memory, Octane have always chosen the American rubber to run on. So they know that well. They know how it behaves during the race as well. And, you know, it's a marriage that's worked in single lap format, Peter Snowden.
And you can't take anything away from the DNA that Luca Ludwig's got. I mean, his father, Klaus Ludwig, it's got to be there, hasn't it? And he's just proven it in that car. The car's brilliant, but it's a stunning lap. And as you spotted it, Johnny, it started on the Grand Prix circuit, but carried it all the way through. Great job.
And I'm now trying to remember the last time Luca Ludwig managed to do this, because I'm pretty sure he's been, if not on pole, there or thereabouts. The BMW has flattered to deceive, quite possibly, on a Friday, to then not necessarily carry that form on into the race itself. But let's remind you of the top 3 for the 50th anniversary of the Nürburgring 24 hours. Jordan Pepper was 4th after a really good initial run. That's a Pro-Am car, but he bags 3rd late in the piece. The hard work for Brazilian driver Augusto Farfus was done on his first effort, because he was about 4 seconds off the second time through. An 8:10.640 for one of 2 Rover Racing BMWs that made that session. But it is the gold and orange of Octane 126 and gold-rated Luca Ludwig, who plucked an 8:09.469 out of the session, and that was done early on. He more or less matched it to, well, within a second of his first effort next time around. So that's what's giving me the impression that the Goodyear tyre wears well over a 25-kilometre period.
And if you did take the second laps individually from the firsts, he would still be the fastest.
He'd still be there.
He would still be on the pole.
Well, that shows you some consistency across 2 laps. What you have to be doing is to do it over 8 laps, which is a stint around here, roughly about an hour, and stay out of all of the carnage that can be presented with 134 other cars on the circuit. And noticing that certain areas very much scattered with gravel, possibly on the exit of Arenberg there, and certainly at the NKG chicane on the Grand Prix track as well. You don't really have a moment to adjust for that. You can't afford to just hope that running over that's not going to cause any dramas late on. But Luca Ludwig, as you say, he comes from great stock, but he's also competed in a number of these 24-hour races, so knows the drill now, Snowy.
And he's put it all together, hasn't he? When it matters for qualifying, he goes into the race tomorrow in the best possible position. Tomorrow, though, totally different story. That was 1 lap. This is 1 day.
Yeah. I think the year I'm remembering is 2020, when Luca managed to get a front row start. It actually wasn't pole position. He started alongside the number 4 Mercedes that year, which was the entry from HRT. So Christa Dulu, Maro Engel, Lucas Stoltz, Manuel Metzger's car, and Luca Ludwig was in exactly the same driver lineup, actually. So he had Hershey, he had Trumme, he had Grossman for teammates. Was 5 seconds away, though, from that year's pole position time. And that will have been held in the wet as well, because we were in around the kind of late 8 minutes, early 9-minute times. When you have perfect conditions and 2 years on of some development of that 488, those are the changes that can be created. So now, at this point of proceedings, Ben, I was about to turn to you and ask you who you thought was going to win, but conveniently we're going to talk about highlights, so you might have been saved by the bell there. I will get your thoughts maybe later on in the weekend about that. So 2 separate qualifying sessions, Tyres, by the looks of things, being called very late by certain cars. But unfortunately for Glickenhaus, who were due to be in the first session, they didn't get any further than the Grand Prix track when they had to go into the pit lane via the back door. Gremlins there that we shall get to the bottom of in due course. Everybody else was waved off, though, in their correct positions, including from the front of the pack, the 116 of Tim Heinemann for KTM. Unfortunately for his teammate Ferdinand Stuck in the 117, that car wouldn't get much further than Hatzenbach and caused dramas for other cars in the session, either those that were about to start their first lap or others that were about to commence lap number 2. KCMG not hanging around with Earl Bamber at the wheel, and Matteo Cairoli as well. Missed the moment for Falcon Motorsport, I have to say, early on in the session. With so many cars circulating all at once, it was always tricky to stay on top of exactly what was going on around a 25-kilometre circuit. But Ferdinand Stuck out of the session early, and he, I suppose, could turn his attention to race mode together with his teammates in the 117 for tomorrow. Maro Engel, happy, I think, with the work that he did in the first session, although, Ben, you were suggesting that maybe, conversations with Jules Gounon suggesting the car wasn't quite in the sweet spot, and it was 12th come the all-important session.
Yeah, best of the Mercedes down there in 8th position with Lucas Stoltz. I was tipping Mercedes for this being their year, but it does seem as though behind Audi, behind BMW, only Porsche one position back in 9th, the best of theirs. The Uber Motorsport, Nico Menzo, who was, I think, one of the last cars to complete a lap time.
But the Octane 126 Luca Ludwig driven Ferrari was out there in the middle order, but it started to set green and purple sector times very early on, was mighty through the very long 2.5-minute sector 7 section, and Luca Ludwig is on pole position for the 2022 edition of the Nürburgring 24 Hours.